Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Garrett Gerber. I know when I was a kid, I used to walk through the grocery store with like my parents, and we used to get chicken breasts like the ones you're seeing on the screen, hopefully, if everything's working right. And I used to think, wow, that's a really big coincidence that the grocery store makes a food that's named after the animal. Obviously, today I know like, oh, the chicken comes from the animal, the chicken. But I think there's still a disconnect in our society between thinking about the animal and the actual food. And I think the easiest way to spot this is to see the labels hormone free or grass fed. And a lot of the times we just brush these aside as like, oh, it's just a money grab. When really these labels are trying to tell you that they're not farming the chickens like this. This is what they call a CAFO, I believe is how it's pronounced, but it stands for a concentrated animal feeding operation. And so I'm sure you've seen pictures like this before, is basically where they just cramp a bunch of animals together and give them really horrid conditions, just really tightly packed. And that way it's more space efficient, it's just more efficient in general to farm the animals this way. I think this is an issue many people are aware of, but they don't really think about on a day-to-day basis. And I think we kind of sweep it under the rug as it's not a big deal. And today, even if it's only a few minutes, I just want to bring it to everyone's attention and talk about, namely, how it affects our diet, how it's morally wrong, and ways we can go about fixing this. So first of all, our diet, the food quality from these CAFOs is just simply worse. So first of all, I want to talk about a South Dakota State University study in 2021. It's called the Public Perception and Animal Well-Being. And so what this looked at is just a general article kind of about like public perception, right, as it said, of food. It talked about how 98% of people aren't responsible for the quality of their food or how the food gets processed. So that means 98% of people, almost everyone is kind of at the whims of, at the mercy of these farmers and these CAFOs, right? So can't really farm chickens ourselves. Most people aren't doing that. So if this is an industry leading thing, everyone suffers because of it. And so I think that's kind of astounding that this impacts so many people and yet everyone's kind of sweeps it under the rug. Second, I want to mention a Daily et al. Article, review of fatty acid profiles and antioxidant content in grass-fed and grain-fed beef, I believe this is. And this is a 2010 study, and this talks about basically how grass-fed cattle or the beef in the retail stores from grass-fed animals is higher in omega-3, is higher in antioxidants. And so basically just saying that it's generally healthier. And so there are healthier alternatives to kind of the very hormonal beef that we're typically eating. And it's just, taking more care of the animals. And yet this is something we kind of don't really focus on. You hear all the news, especially current day, about, you know, the food like they banned Red 40 and all the changing around that and how European food is so much healthier. And yet we're kind of just ignoring these CAFOs altogether. Second, the moral issues of CAFOs. So obviously, cramping a bunch of animals together doesn't really give them a very fulfilling life. There's a National Research Council paper known in 2009, and it basically just talks about how animals very much do feel pain. And so I think if you think about this from a philosophical perspective, I especially I don't know how familiar you guys are with philosophy. I'm currently enrolled in a philosophy class, and kind of one main focus is like, for a God to exist, how do you rationalize pain? And so I think this is something humanity has kind of wrestled with. Pain is obviously a bad thing. And I think we kind of just pretend like, these livestock, they don't feel pain. But really, I mean, we all evolved from a common ancestor at one point. Most animals, all vertebrates, feel pain, is what the study officially found out. And so, I mean, you are inflicting pain with these harsh conditions. This isn't just oh, that they're bored. This is like they're literally living painful lives, and then everyone's just been kind of okay with that. And then secondly, or last, I just want to go over a American Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals 2023 report. You can see here, this is the kind of how many people support a ban on CAFOs, basically. And as you can see, it's pretty split. And actually, political affiliation does seem to have a tendency here, or a bias based on how you answer the question. It affects how you answer the question. So, but the point is that it's very split. And so this isn't even something that like everyone's kind of on board with. Like, oh yeah, like at some point we'll get around to it. There's a lot of people who don't think it's even on the agenda at all, and that, it's fine, it's just farming practice. And so I think when you take into account the moral perspective and how it is literally just worse food for us, there is no reason to not ban these. However, many people are kind of complacent with it. And so lastly, I want to talk about what we can do to help um, vote with our dollars, right? I mean, this is social activism within capitalism, kind of buy what you support. There's an article by the Missouri, sorry, Independent in 2022, and it's the state federal regulations are weak. And it talks about how there's not a lot of regulation on CAFOs, and so they're really given free rein to do whatever they want. There's not really any EPA laws limiting what they can do. They have to do some reporting on the practices they're doing. That's why, you can hear about when they're grass-fed or not, when they're hormonal or not. Excuse me. But for the most part, I mean, there's nothing limiting these practices. They could cram as many animals together as they really please. And so this is something that it doesn't seem like the government, especially with the last report I showed, is really concerned with. And so I want to reference one last article by the Mindful Fork, sorry. Ban factory meats is what it's called. Sorry, not very good handwriting. And this is from 2024, and this talked about how there's different ways we can go about purchasing well or good quality meats. It talks about buying from local farmers and not these big farms that use these CAFO mechanisms. It talks about how you can look for these labels like grass-fed and hormone-free and with antioxidants. And in this way, you can support good practices and not give your money to bad practices. A lot of fast food too. I read an article, I don't officially have a citation here, but about Chick-fil-A, how they're actually kind of regressing in food quality. They're no longer 100% certifying that their chicken is antioxidant free. And so I mean, it goes to show that food quality as a business, it doesn't really bring in the big bucks. So a lot of companies aren't incentivized to do this. And so I think as people, we need to incentivize them to do that and vote with our dollars. So that's the end of the slide deck. So yeah, CAFOs are bad both for the reasons of morality, how the animals are living terrible lives, they're feeling all this pain, and it's just terrible. And also, it's just hurting our food and our diet and our health, especially when other countries are living much healthier lives and eating much healthier diets. There's no reason we can't try to pursue that. And then how we can help. The government doesn't seem very interested in this. Obviously, activism would help, political activism, but I think the biggest thing we can do is voting with our dollars, like I said, and buying from local farmers, buying grass-fed beef, and so on. That way, we can show these companies what people value, and it's not this very cheap chicken or very cheap beef. It's animal rights, it's animals not feeling pain, it's better diets. Thank you for your time.